My name is Kennedy. I'm 32 years old. My spouse Samuel is 35 years old. We married in a traditional same workplace marriage. I'm currently a housewife on maternity leave. I became pregnant a year after we married. We had recently completed the construction of our ideal home. Every time I inhaled, the fragrance of pungent new wood aroused me. I was flooded with joy as I waited for my kid in this house. However, it was in this location that an amazing drama occurred. My in-laws came to help us move into our freshly constructed home. They assisted a little, but my mother-in-law took advantage of me by demanding a duplicate key to the house. What? Why would I give my mother-in-law the keys to my house? When I tried to refuse, my husband replied, "Oh, Mom, don't worry. I have to go get some food now. I'll make a duplicate key on the way back." What? What a ridiculous hubby. Yes, he is that mother's son. Or am I the one with a weird set of values? I looked at my spouse, puzzled, and he remarked, "I want my house to be lively." Don't you agree? I want this to be a gathering place. You are also pregnant, and you require some assistance, don't you? His statements left me astonished and puzzled. My horrible omen came true. My mother-in-law arrives to our house every morning at precisely 9 a.m. and she brought her laundry to my place and remarked, "Whether you do laundry for 2 or 4 people, the work is the same, right?" She then hands me a bucket full of laundry with a cruel smirk on her face. While I am doing the laundry, she sits. "Is breakfast ready yet?" I inquired of my mother-in-law with repressed displeasure. "Didn't you eat at home?" "No, I simply made my husband eat. He needs to be up early for work, but I have time. So I chose to eat my breakfast meal here." "Huh? What do you mean by morning meal?" "My husband normally has coffee and bread for breakfast. I merely took a bite of some of his leftovers, and that's all. But since my mother-in-law is coming over, I'll have to include salad and soup on the menu." My mother-in-law describes it as a special morning breakfast. She consistently expects it on weekday mornings. My mother-in-law also has lunch at our house. When it comes to supper, she repeats that infamous line, "Whether you're cooking for 2 or 4, the process is the same, just add more ingredients." Using the same rationale as the washing, my mother-in-law would bring home half of the meal I cooked in her Tupperware on one occasion. After nearly 3 months of living this way, I've been cooking for everyone all the time. I was wondering if you could occasionally prepare dinner. I timidly requested that my mother-in-law cook dinner. Then she asked, "What? Are you issuing commands to your husband's mother? Don't you show any respect?" My mother-in-law trained me in the same manner. What a horrible daughter-in-law she is. You do what's necessary and get on with it. I couldn't respond to her. Come to think of it, my mother-in-law never addressed me as anything other than you or this person. I was dimly thinking about it while I listened to her reprimand me. "Hello, Samuel. Regarding your mother, I was fed up with my mother-in-law's behavior and attempted to talk to my husband about it. But he refused to listen to me at all. Just listen to my mother. You will be all right. I mean, obeying your parents is simple sense." So I remained in this unequal scenario until the final month of labor. Then one day, I went into labor. The contractions began in the middle of the night. They came at regular intervals. Of course, I was unable to perform chores at the time. Then my mother-in-law entered. She walked into the house without pushing the inner cone, using a duplicate key. She entered the living room and asked, "What? You're not ready for breakfast yet. You are quite lazy. Now hurry up as usual." My mother-in-law yelled at me. I usually said good morning to her, even if I didn't want to. However, at the time, my construction became so strong that my mother-in-law's yell could be heard in the distance. Pain waves came and went without pausing. "Sweat is spilling on the floor. Please take me to the hospital." My voice faded off with the contractions. "Well, I believe it will take at least another 10 hours. The baby will not be arriving until midday. Don't be so easy on yourself. You're my housekeeper. Get your breakfast ready immediately." I gasped in pain, unable to answer my mother-in-law's enraged voice. "Samuel, please assist me." My vision had dimmed and I was losing consciousness. I clung to my husband's lap, but my husband simply closed the newspaper he was reading, lovingly caressed my head, and replied, "If Mom said it takes more time, then I suppose it does. She has been there, so why aren't you listening to her? Anyway, how soon will breakfast be ready?" I couldn't handle it anymore. My water broke. Ambulance transport brought me to the hospital, where I received good care. It is a healthy baby boy. When I was stunned in the hospital after giving delivery, a nurse politely reached out to me. "I instructed you to call a hospital. If you were having contractions every 5 minutes, why didn't you call us earlier?" Well, I did desire to do so. I implored both my mother-in-law and my husband, but they assured me that everything was still great. When I explained the problem, the nurse sighed. Are you certain you want to return home to those people and raise a child? The nurse inquired worriedly. I understood what she meant. The nurse was correct. Will I still be addressed as you or this person and treated as if I were a cleaner once the baby is born? Could I raise this baby in that house? My face must have exhibited signs of nervousness. You're going to be a mother. Protecting yourself entails protecting your children. Take care of yourself for the sake of your child, all right? The nurse consoled me, reminding me to protect myself for the sake of my child. The nurse smiled and massaged my back. A mother must have a healthy body and mind, you know. For the sake of my child, I will remain strong. I must be strong. I'm determined. I clapped my shaky palms while staring at my baby's little hands. After a few days, I returned home with the baby. My mother-in-law was there, as always, ready to harass me. Okay, the housekeeper is back. She beamed at me as soon as I walked into the house. But I had decided to do something very different. I flung my hospital bag on the floor with a clatter. I took a big breath and announced in a loud voice that resonated across the living room, I am not your housekeeper. I suppose she had no notion about my yell. My mother-in-law's shoulders shook and her face twitched up. My husband likewise set down the newspaper he was reading, swallowed, and looked at me. You make me sick. You and your foolish son. You decided to give me another 10 hours of labor anguish, and I ended up in an ambulance. I pity you because you lack common sense and humanity. I was astonished to hear my voice sound like that. Silence dominated the main room. I wouldn't be hushed anymore. I would not be dictated to. I will safeguard my child and myself as a mother. With these words, my retaliation began. The next day, my spouse left for work. He hadn't spoken with me since yesterday. Did he believe it was wrong to treat me as his mother does? Or was he startled that I had snapped? I had no idea what my husband was up to, but he ate a slice of bread as normal and left. After hubby departed for work, I had an hour until my mother-in-law arrived. In the meantime, I contacted a locksmith. Of course, I called them to change the lock on the front door so that my mother-in-law could not enter with the old key. As expected, at 9 a.m., I heard a rattling noise. I tried opening the front door. The doorbell rang repeatedly. I could also hear her hammering on the door aggressively. Hi, you. Why won't the door open? I heard my mother-in-law yell. This is enough. Stop jogging around. Hey, do you hear me? Without hesitation, I dialed 911. Yes, trespassing. A police car arrived immediately, complete with sirens. My mother-in-law's ranting had subsided, and they were asking her what was going on. When the police officer asked me, I said that I had no idea. After a while, the cops took my mother-in-law away. I returned to the living room and sipped my tea. The baby cried, so I fed him. The baby's skin was soft and adorable. I could not stand it. I couldn't stomach it if my mother-in-law defiled this darling new baby. After 8 p.m., I heard someone try to open the front door again. The doorbell rang again and again. Hello, what is this? What's happening here? My husband called me on the phone. I replaced the locks. I couldn't stand your mother and barred her from the house. I told my spouse coldly, Huh? What exactly are you talking about? Have you forgotten? I told you that I wanted this house to be a gathering place. I desire a calm home, and I want a place where my family will feel right at home. I've given you exactly what you wanted all along. Now it is my turn to get what I desire. I don't want to have a baby in this environment. I told my spouse exactly what I wanted to say. What? No, you cannot. Besides, my mother has been supporting you, hasn't she? Great. He really does not understand anything. I told this to my husband with distaste. No, she would only be a hassle to me. I'll never forget the way your mother treated me. For your information, I'm returning to work following my maternity leave. Knowing that it would not bother me if we never saw again is sufficient. I'm going to tell your coworkers that you forced me to work until my water burst. After telling him this, I hung up the phone. Then I heard a car's engine, so I think he gave up and went to his parents' house. I went back to the living room, watched television, and fed the baby when he cried. And I fell asleep, holding my baby in my arms. As I had expected, I received a call from my father-in-law the next day. Kennedy, I want to know what occurred. What made you so angry? You were a really calm and gentle guy. What happened? I suppose my wife and son must have done something bad to you, right? My father-in-law got outraged over the phone. I don't want either of them in this house again, especially your wife. I'll be visiting you this weekend. See you then. I told my father-in-law that and hung up the phone. My husband, my mother-in-law, and I are in a conflict, but I have a baby to protect. I cannot lose. So I took the baby and headed to my in-laws' house for the weekend. Oh well, he's so cute. I hastily brushed away my mother-in-law's hand on the baby. Do not touch him, ever. You transported me to the hospital in an ambulance. My mother-in-law's eyes turned white, and she flinched at my remarks. What? Are you surprised? You've spoken to me like that 1,000 times. Have you not? What is this person? I am freaking out. Have you ever been attacked like this? I responded furiously, imitating her words. Ambulance? My father-in-law seemed astounded, as if he'd never heard of it. See, I knew they had not informed him about the ambulance. Your wife nearly killed me. The construction was so awful that I pleaded for assistance, but they disregarded me. She even called me a housekeeper and told me to prepare breakfast. My water broke on the spot, and I was transported to the hospital, nearly unconscious. I went directly to my father-in-law. Jesus Christ, my father-in-law's hands trembled. My counterattack continues. It all began the day after we moved into our new house. I laid out everything for him. She came to my place every morning to ask for breakfast, cooling down with a special morning meal. She would bring her laundry and make me do it every time. She made me cook all of the dinners and bring them home in Tupperware. She made me do this until my water broke and I was in pain. I didn't even know. I was at work early that morning and had no idea. My father-in-law's shoulders dropped in disappointment. But I had a sense that I was eating the food you prepared. My father-in-law stated it with a voice that sounded like he was trying to be squeezed out. For the past 40 years of our marriage, I've eaten my wife's food. I knew the taste would change abruptly, but when she said she had altered her cooking method, I believed her. Lying is the worst thing that can happen to a married relationship. Kennedy, I apologize. I felt sad for my father-in-law because he had no idea what was going on, but I told him that your wife had told me that your mother had also bullied her. In other words, had you turned a blind eye to the situation? Like mine, did your mother bully your wife? I blamed my father-in-law. What I said must have surprised my father-in-law. After a little interval, he shook his head weakly. My mother was already in heaven when we married. It was my turn to be startled. What? What do you mean? Yes, my mother-in-law made up the entire thing. Does this imply that your wife deceived you and I was sacrificed? Is this correct? My father-in-law averted his gaze at my question. That is what it would look like. My father-in-law's expression conveyed regret. I said my goodbyes to my mother-in-law. This person came to my home and treated me like a housekeeper, and you abused me in the name of my daughter-in-law. I would never be able to raise a child in such harsh living conditions. Hey, do you hear me? I am talking to you. You are lying, *. I had forgotten what to call her anymore. It's enough to call this woman whatever, like she has been doing to me. My father-in-law followed me. Yes, my wife's lies and actions are unacceptable, but my son is also to blame, saying that my father-in-law turned the tables on my husband. My husband and mother-in-law were both speechless. You're both a bad influence on my baby's development. If I protect myself, I will protect my baby. I'm going to end this right now to protect my baby. I presented them with the divorce papers I had prepared, and then I returned to work. My ex-husband had already departed the company. I suppose he was terrified of being exposed to rumors. Furthermore, my ex-mother-in-law divorced my ex-father-in-law. His wife's constant lies and bullying of me, in my opinion, fueled his sense of justice. My ex-mother-in-law never appeared again, and she relocated far away, and our lives were at ease. Sometimes my father-in-law paid me a visit. He smiles whenever he sees his grandson. That's so sweet. He's such a small person. My son laughs as his grandfather holds up his favorite toy. I wish to protect this adorable smile in his eyes. I promise him a happy future.